So I came home to find stepdad's entitled daughter moved in and locks changed. So I'm a 31-year-old woman, and I just bought my very own house recently. To celebrate, I decided to throw a housewarming party and invited all my family and friends to come over a few days ago. I also invited my parents to the party, but I was very specific in telling them that I was only inviting them. I did this because I wanted to avoid my mom bringing her new family along. You see, my parents split up nearly 15 years ago, and it's been just us since then. About 2 years ago, my mom got married again to a man named Adam. Adam has a daughter named Emma from a previous marriage, who is 21 years old now. Emma is the kind of person who thinks she deserves everything without working for it. And honestly, she's the kind of person I just can't stand. Adam isn't much fun to be around either. It's pretty obvious that they don't really like me much, and the feeling is mutual. So, naturally, I didn't want them at my housewarming party. This party was a big deal for me, and I wanted to enjoy it without any drama. Despite my clear instructions, my mom decided to bring them along anyway. When I confronted her about it, she said she hoped this would be an opportunity for me to get closer to her new family. She thought it would be great if we could all just get along. I didn't want to make a scene at my own party, so I didn't push the issue further that day and decided to let it go for the time being. However, Emma couldn't help but make a rude comment about my house during the party. She told all my friends that she could afford a much better house with her salary, which, by the way, is nearly half of what I earn. That really got on my nerves, so I responded by saying she should go ahead and buy her own house then. I mentioned it would probably make her parents happy to see their 22-year-old daughter move out of their basement. My comment made a lot of people laugh, and Emma turned bright red with embarrassment. I could tell she was humiliated, but she was the one who started making rude comments. So I didn't feel too bad about what I said. With so many other guests to take care of, I didn't dwell on it and moved on to chat with other people at the party. After the housewarming party was all done and everyone had left, including Adam and Emma, my mom stuck around. That was when I decided it was time to have a serious talk with her. I told her straight up that I wasn't looking to make her new husband and his daughter a part of my life. I'm already in my 30s, which means I'm totally capable of choosing who I want to hang out with and who I'd rather not deal with at all. Unfortunately, my mom's new husband and his daughter are just not people I enjoy being around. They haven't been nice or respectful to me, and that's putting it mildly. Then, my mom dropped a bombshell on me. She suggested that Emma, her stepdaughter, should come live with me for a bit because Emma's new job was way closer to my house than to where they lived. My mom thought that if Emma and I spent some real time together, I'd start to see her in a different light. I couldn't believe what I was hearing and said no way right on the spot. Just getting through one evening with Emma at the party was tough enough. The idea of having her in my house every single day? No, I couldn't even begin to think about how stressful that would be. Emma acts spoiled, doesn't show any manners, and I just knew I didn't want that kind of energy in my own home. My home is supposed to be where I can relax and feel comfortable, not a place where I'm on edge all the time. My mom really tried to persuade me to let Emma stay, but I wasn't having any of it. I told her straight up that it was not going to happen ever, so she might as well not waste her energy. My mom got really mad and left in a hurry, and I didn't go after her. I felt there was no point in dragging out the argument because there was absolutely no way I was going to agree to her crazy idea. But then, just when I thought things couldn't get any weirder, something totally unexpected happened the very next day. I got an alert on my phone from the security company that monitors my house, saying there was a break-in. I left work immediately and raced home, only to find out that I couldn't even get into my own house. The locks had been changed without my knowledge, and I could hear voices inside. I was just about to dial the police because, honestly, what else was I supposed to do in that situation? When Adam, who's now married to my mom, opened the door, he pretty much told me I wasn't allowed to come into my own house anymore. He said this was supposed to be my punishment. I was super confused and asked him exactly what I was being punished for. Adam wouldn't give me a straight answer. Instead, he told me I needed to figure it out by myself, but threw in a hint about how I had stood up to Emma during my housewarming party. According to him, I had been disrespectful to her in my own home, and that was a big no-no. Adam then explained that they had taken over my house because I had refused to let Emma move in with me, which had upset my mom a lot when she left the party. He said he thought I was acting too big for my boots, and that it was time someone brought me down a notch or two, and apparently he had decided he was the right person for the job. I was so shocked and annoyed by what he was saying that I just laughed at him. I told him straight up that I was going to call the police and have both him and Emma thrown out. They had no right to just barge into my house and act like they owned the place. But then Adam tried to play a card he thought he had up his sleeve. He bet that I wouldn't actually call the police because it would deeply upset my mom. He knew all about my mom's bad history with the police and how much she wanted to avoid them because of her past experiences. He figured I wouldn't want to do anything to make my mom mad at me. Adam even went as far as to say Emma deserved to live in my house more than I did. Then he just left me standing outside and slammed the door in my face. Left there on the porch, it hit me that I really didn't have many options. Despite Adam's bet, calling the police seemed like the only real move I had. It was clear that Adam and Emma had made themselves at home and weren't planning on leaving just because I said so. So I picked up my phone, called the police, and hoped for the best. The police arrived within an hour to evict them. They caught Emma in the act of unpacking her things, as if she was planning to stay for good. Adam was totally taken aback. He had not expected me to go through with calling the police, especially because of how my mom feels about them. I knew this decision would probably upset my mom, especially given her traumatic history with law enforcement, but I was stuck between a rock and a hard place. My home was being taken over, and I couldn't just stand by and let that happen. I had to stand up for myself, even if it meant causing a rift with my mom. I found myself in a situation where calling the police was the only option I had left. My mom called me about an hour ago to talk about it, and the conversation didn't go how I expected. She wasn't angry with me, which somehow made me feel even worse. I thought she might yell or be really upset, but instead, she sounded deeply hurt. She told me that if I was really that against the idea of letting Emma, my stepsister, stay with me to try and show she wasn't the bad person I thought she was, I should have just picked up the phone and talked to her first. She believed she could have solved the whole issue without it getting so out of hand. But what really got to me was when she said she couldn't forgive me for the way I chose to handle things. According to my mom, calling the police and getting Adam and Emma thrown out of my house was a step too far, and because of that, she said she couldn't see herself speaking to me again. She felt what I did was something she just couldn't get past. Hearing her sound so sad and defeated really broke my heart. It didn't seem like she was just putting on an act. She sounded genuinely upset. Normally, my mom is someone who's drawn to drama, but this time it felt different. She seemed truly disappointed in me, which was a lot for me to take in. Even though I felt like I hadn't done anything wrong, I apologized to her during our call. Unfortunately, it didn't change the situation. She still ended the call, blocked my number, and now I'm left feeling terrible about the whole thing. I keep turning it over in my mind, but I can't see any other way I could have handled it that would have made Adam and Emma leave without calling the police. To me, involving the police felt like the only choice I had at the moment, and I'm struggling to understand why my mom is taking this so hard. I know she's had some really tough times in the past, especially when it comes to dealing with the police, but it seems like she's not trying to see this situation from my perspective. It feels a bit like she's only thinking about herself. I never wanted to make her relive any of those bad memories. The whole mess just spiraled out of control. And if there's anyone she should be upset with, shouldn't it be her husband and my stepsister for making such a drastic move and causing all this trouble? I feel so bad about everything that's happened. I can't go into detail about my mom's past with the police here, because it's not my place to share her personal stories. But now, I'm left wondering if I should try apologizing again, or if there's anything else I should do. So am I the jerk here for calling the police on my stepdad and stepsister, even though I knew about my mom's bad experiences with the police? Update 1. Alright, I was hesitant to share this part of the story because I felt it wasn't my place to talk about my mom's personal experiences without her okay. But since this is all going to be anonymous on Reddit, and no one can figure out who we are just from this post, I think it's important to give you the full picture. This way, you'll understand better why my mom has such a hard time with the police. So here's the thing. About 15 years ago, after my mom and dad split up, my mom started dating someone new. This guy was a police officer, and I'm sure you can guess that things didn't go well. This guy, my mom's boyfriend, was really bad news. He was the kind of person you hope never to meet in your life. Somehow, he managed to keep my mom in a relationship with him for over 2 years, which was nothing short of a miracle given how awful he was. He constantly put her down, destroying her self-confidence bit by bit. He also cut her off from everyone she knew, making her more and more isolated. There were times when she could only meet me once or twice a month, and even then, it was like she wasn't really there, like her mind was somewhere else. Things got even worse after a while. He didn't want her seeing anyone because he was jealous of her past and wanted her to cut off all ties with it if she was going to be with him. This guy was the epitome of jealousy, pettiness, and insecurity. Honestly, he's the last person I'd ever want anyone to date. Their relationship finally ended, but not in a good way. He left my mom out of the blue, running off with a coworker in the middle of the night. All he left for my mom was a letter, telling her he didn't want to be with her anymore and confessing that he'd been having an affair for the last 8 months. This whole ordeal left my mom with a deep-seated trauma regarding police officers, which explains her reaction to my calling the cops on Adam and Emma. After that whole ordeal with her boyfriend who was a cop, my mom was really sad and down for almost a whole year. It was like something inside her changed, and she ended up being really scared of anything to do with police. She couldn't trust them at all anymore. It was so serious that there was this one time she lost her purse and she wouldn't even think about reporting it to the police. That's how scared and distrustful she had become of them. So you can probably understand why my mom felt so betrayed and hurt when she found out I had called the police on her husband and my stepsister. To her, involving the police was the worst thing I could have done. It felt like a huge betrayal. And the crazy part is, her husband and stepsister knew how she felt about the police. It makes me wonder if they did what they did on purpose, hoping it would drive a wedge between my mom and me, maybe even turn her against me for good. But proving something like that? That's nearly impossible. It's just my side of the story against theirs. When the police showed up, Adam looked pretty shocked, but Emma? She didn't seem bothered at all, which makes me think even more about their intentions. Now, there's not much I can do except hope that my mom will see things differently eventually. Even if she doesn't, I have to be okay with it. I know I did everything I could to avoid trouble and keep things peaceful, but it seems like they were determined to stir things up. Now it's up to my mom to decide who she wants to believe and stand by. Update 2. It's been nearly 2 weeks since my mom and I last talked, all because of what happened. I have a feeling Emma is probably thrilled about the whole situation. I don't keep tabs on her social media, but a buddy of mine showed me a photo Emma posted a few days back. It was a picture of her, my mom, and Adam all hanging out at the beach, wearing sunglasses and looking relaxed. The caption was something about just the fam recovering. I'm not sure what she's claiming to recover from, because from my point of view, I'm the one who had to deal with a stressful mess because of her and her dad's actions. I brought the whole situation up to my dad to get his take on it, and he thinks I handled it the right way. What other choice did I have, given everything that went down? He even mentioned that before the housewarming party fiasco, my mom had asked him for advice on finding a cheap place for Emma to live that was close to her job. Since my dad works in real estate, but more with selling houses than renting them, he told my mom he couldn't really help unless she was looking to buy a place for Emma. My mom seemed like she was considering it, which is kind of shocking. Adam, on the other hand, didn't want to invest in buying a house just for Emma's temporary job situation, which does make some sense. But what really gets to me is how different my mom's approach is with Emma compared to how she was with me. I remember when it was time for me to go to college. My mom insisted that I figure it out on my own because she wanted me to learn independence and self-sufficiency. She wouldn't help me financially with tuition, saying it was for my own good. Yet it seems like Emma gets a pass and a lot more support. It's hard not to notice the stark difference in how my mom is treating the situation with Emma compared to her approach with me growing up. It really bothers me that my mom seems to have a closer relationship with Emma, who isn't even her own daughter, than she does with me. Seeing them together on a beach trip really got to me, especially since my mom always told me she didn't like the beach. She always said she preferred going to the mountains, or maybe hiking through the woods whenever we talked about going on vacation. I've always liked the beach, but I had to give up on that idea whenever we planned trips, because I knew if I pushed for it, she wouldn't want to go, and we'd probably end up not going anywhere at all. So, seeing her change her preferences for Emma, doing something she never did for me, feels really unfair. I didn't expect to be as upset by that social media post as I am, but it hit me hard. It's like Emma is getting to have the mother and family experience with my mom that I always wished for, but never really got. My mom just wasn't willing to be that kind of mom for me, and it's really painful to admit. I think I need to have a conversation with my mom when she gets back from her trip, because this silence between us is just too much to bear. Even if the conversation ends with her telling me she's disappointed in me and me deciding I don't want to talk to her anymore, I feel like we need to have at least one more talk. It might be our last, but I just can't keep going on like this without trying to clear the air. Update 3. I told one of my friends to tell me whenever they think Emma is back from her vacation. I learned that they came back yesterday. I don't know how I'm going to bring this up with my mother, but I know that I have to get through it somehow. She has blocked me on her social media, so I can't use that to get to her. But she hasn't blocked my number, and I guess I'm going to have to call her. It's going to be hard because we haven't spoken in almost 2 weeks and we aren't really on the best terms right now. My dad thinks that I should give it a day or two before I contact her, but I think she'll answer if I call her right now. She's probably in a good mood from the vacation, so that might lead her to accept my call or something. To be honest, I just want to do this because I feel brave right now, and I want to rip off the Band-Aid as soon as I can while I still have the courage to do it. It's just been one day since I learned that my mother is back in town, but I almost feel like throwing up because what if she doesn't answer my call and this is it? I haven't done it yet because I feel like if she doesn't answer my call, then that'd be pretty earth-shattering for me. I've never had that great of a relationship with my mother, but it was a relationship still. So if I lose that, then I don't know what I'm going to do. Update 4. So I finally worked up the courage to call my mom, and we just finished a phone conversation that lasted nearly half an hour. During the call, I opened up to her, sharing everything I've been feeling about our relationship and what I've been going through lately, just like I've written in my previous updates. It was really tough to be so honest about my feelings towards her as a mom and to lay everything out there. But I felt it was crucial for her to hear all of this directly from me, even more than sharing it with you all here. She didn't say a lot back to me, but she did mention that she understood where I was coming from. She even expressed a wish that she had been a better mother from the start. I wasn't really sure what to make of that comment, and I didn't dive deeper into it because I thought it might be something we could explore more when we meet up in person. We've planned to have lunch together tomorrow, and I'm already feeling anxious about it. The thought of sitting down with her face to face is making me really nervous. I'm worried it's going to be super awkward. I might be the one making it awkward because I'm already stressing about the whole thing. Every time I think about meeting up, I worry I might say or do the wrong thing, and I can't shake the feeling that something might go wrong. Ever since she remarried, it seems like our interactions are just waiting for the next big issue to arise. I'm just really hoping that this meeting doesn't prove my worries right. Update 5. Hey everyone, I'm on my journey back home right now after having lunch with my mom, and honestly, I just can't bring myself to head back to work today. I'm feeling pretty down, and all I really want to do is go home, maybe pour myself a glass of wine, and just chill in bed without worrying about anything else for the rest of the day. The chat with my mom didn't really go as I had hoped or imagined it would. It's not that it was a total disaster. We did manage to talk through some of our issues, but the way things ended up, it sort of feels like we're breaking up. Except this feels way worse than any breakup I've ever had. This isn't like breaking up with a boyfriend who decides to leave for someone else. This is about my mom, who seems to have chosen her stepdaughter Emma over me, and that just hurts on a whole different level. I feel like since you all have been following along with this saga, you deserve to know how the meetup went. It started off pretty normal. We hugged when we met, which was kind of nice, and things seemed okay for a little bit. But then, as we really got into talking, all these feelings I've been holding back just came rushing out. I ended up telling her how much I wished she had been there for me in the way she is now for Emma. It might sound odd, especially since I'm grown up now, but back when I was a teenager, I really needed her. And she just wasn't there in the way I needed. I shared with her that I felt like I deserved to be treated better by her back then, and seeing her change so much for her new family has been really tough for me. It's hard for me to understand why she couldn't have been that person for our family when we were growing up. I know I'm in my 30s now, but it still feels like the younger me missed out on having the kind of mom I needed. It's like I'm talking about wanting a different version of the same person. As I spilled everything out to her, I could see her getting teary. It was obviously really hard for her to hear all this, but I just couldn't stop myself. I felt like this might be my only chance to really say everything that's been on my mind. I had to take this opportunity to lay it all out there. I made sure she knew that despite it all, I do love her. But I also couldn't shy away from telling her that I think she could have been a much better mom to me. When I was done, my mom told me she was truly sorry that she hadn't put in as much effort with me as she is now with Emma. My mom opened up about her past during our conversation. She shared that back when she was younger, she really just wanted to live her life for herself. My parents got married super young because that's what their families wanted. And then they had me when they were still pretty much kids themselves. My mom told me she wasn't ready to be a mom when I came along, but my grandparents insisted she take on the huge job of raising a kid, even though she didn't feel prepared for it at all. After she and my dad split up, my mom felt like she finally got a bit of control over her own life for the first time. She admitted she became a bit careless with that freedom. By the time she and my dad officially divorced, I was old enough that she thought I could fend for myself, so she started to step back. But the truth is, she had started to check out from our family life way before the divorce papers were even filed. It's a hard thing to hear, but my mom confessed she didn't really want to be a mom back then. She decided to start putting her own needs and wants first, which was both selfish and immature. She explained how tired she was of always doing what everyone else expected of her, and she just couldn't handle the pressure anymore. She wanted to live life on her own terms, even if that meant our relationship suffered. Now she feels like she's ready to be part of a family again and take care of her loved ones. Unfortunately, that meant she became the mother to Emma she never was to me, and a partner to Adam. She acknowledged that I was right about her not being the best mom or partner in our family. She recognized her selfishness was a big part of why things didn't work out. Hearing all this, I thought maybe we could start fresh. Now that everything was out in the open, it seemed like we might be able to move forward and work on building a better relationship. My mom suggested that maybe it would be better if we didn't talk or see each other for a bit. She thought that since we were both dealing with a lot in our own lives, adding stress from each other might not be a good idea. She said maybe taking some time apart would help us come back to each other stronger or something like that, which sounded pretty silly to me. Deep down, I knew the real reason she wanted a break from talking wasn't just about stress or personal issues. It was because of Adam and Emma. They clearly didn't like the idea of her being close to me, and it seemed pretty obvious that my mom was putting their feelings above mine. So, while I wasn't shocked by her suggestion, it was still a huge disappointment. It felt like my mom had a golden opportunity to make things right, to be a bit less selfish than she had been in the past. Yet, she chose to let me down once more. It's really sad, and it hurt a lot, especially because for a moment there, I thought we were actually making a real connection, like we were finally understanding each other as people. Turns out I was mistaken. Her admitting to her mistakes didn't really change anything. She was still ready to push me aside, treating me as if I wasn't even her daughter, just to keep her new family happy. But you know what? It's okay. This whole situation has shown me that my mom was probably never going to be the parent I needed her to be. It's a bit sad to come to terms with, but there's not much I can do about it now. And honestly, after being let down so many times before, I'm not even surprised anymore. All I can do is move on and focus on my own life. Thanks for watching. My father somehow found me after disowning me. What should I do? I'm using a throwaway account for this because it's something I don't like thinking about too much. I can give you a little more detail about what happened and why it matters so much to me. My ex-girlfriend cheated on me, and when I confronted her about it, she freaked out and told almost everyone we knew that I raped her to cover up her cheating. It was like she tried to destroy my life just to protect herself. The police arrested me during the investigation, but eventually, they released me because there wasn't any evidence. However, the damage was already done. My parents had already disowned me, and most of my friends stopped talking to me. I hadn't even been proven guilty, but my parents still believed I was a rapist who got away with it. It felt like I was completely on my own. The only person who stood by me was my best friend. He helped me in secret, knowing how badly things were going for me, but I couldn't stand staying in that environment. So I ran away. I didn't have anything to lose and no one to talk to. My college barred me from going to classes and would only send me work via email and let me come in just for exams. I decided to leave that town entirely and worked some community jobs, trying to scrape together enough money to get a small apartment where I could live and start fresh. After a while, I realized that I couldn't stand looking at my own name anymore. Every time I saw it, it reminded me of everything that had happened. So I decided to change it. That was a small but meaningful step toward creating a new identity and distancing myself from my past. With that, I made some new friends and enrolled in university again. Looking back, I don't know why I did that because it just left me buried in debt and broke. But at the time, I thought maybe finishing my degree would help me rebuild my life. I pushed through and finally completed my degree in teaching. Once I did, I decided to move to a different country, far away on the other side of the world. I found a nice apartment and got a job as a teacher there. This new environment felt like a breath of fresh air, and I settled into my job, focusing on my students and trying to find my place in this new life. I eventually met a girl who turned out to be my now wife. Meeting her changed everything for me. She showed me kindness and love at a time when I still felt pretty damaged from my past. We took things slow, but eventually we moved in together, and she stood by my side through the ups and downs. We decided to get married, and she became a rock for me, giving me stability and a renewed sense of hope. When I first met my wife, I couldn't fully trust her. I was so used to being on guard that I would flinch if she even tried to touch me, or I'd start fidgeting when she'd get close. But slowly, she showed me how patient and understanding she could be, and I eventually fell head over heels for her. Sometime later, she gave birth to our twins, a daughter and a son. I adore those two, and I'd defend them to the edge of the universe. My wife's family welcomed me quickly despite me being a foreigner, and they treated me kindly. It made me remember what a loving family feels like. Now, I'm living happily in a nice house with my wife and kids, at least, until last night. I was playing on my wife's PlayStation with our son, while she and our daughter were out in the garden. Out of nowhere, there's a knock on the door, and it's my father. He tried to speak to me, but I was too stunned. I slammed the door hard, scaring my son. I took him to his room and called my wife to bring our daughter inside. She was as shaken as I was. My father kept knocking, and I just broke down in that moment. My wife comforted me before answering the door herself. When she asked who he was, he said he was my father. My wife only knew a bit about my past, but she felt nothing but sorrow for me. She was furious and began yelling at my father for abandoning me. After she calmed down, I asked her to let him in, but to keep our kids busy in their room while I talked to him. He said he had been helping my ex-girlfriend clear some stuff from her phone and had stumbled upon messages between her and the guy she was cheating on me with. They were expressing guilt over ruining my life and how she wished she could take it all back. Hearing my father say that left me stunned. It brought back all the anger, confusion, and sadness I had been holding on to for so long. I wanted to believe him, but our relationship was so fractured. I listened, trying to process what he said, while my wife kept the kids entertained. I knew I had a lot to think about, but at least my father's words provided some closure to a chapter that had been left painfully unresolved. My father didn't confront my ex-girlfriend directly when he found out the truth because he wasn't ready to stir up old drama. Instead, he silently began searching for me to let me know that he believed me. I don't know how he found me, but I don't care because he's here now and I need help figuring out what to do next. I've thought it over while walking through some random streets trying to clear my head, and I've considered my options. One option is to turn him away and tell him to go back to her country and leave me alone. Another is to reconcile with him and maybe even let my mother know. But honestly, I don't know what the best decision is. I'm really stressed out and planning to take tomorrow off work to sort things out. My father is staying in an apartment nearby, so I'll probably go to him with my answer. I've got to follow my heart on this one, but I'm not sure I can ever fully trust any of them again. Now for the comments before reading the update. He said that he was doing my ex-girlfriend a favor by clearing some stuff on her phone. Is this not odd to you? 1. Why would he still have contact with her? 2. Why would he snoop on her phone? People just trying to help. Don't break into phones? This is a red flag. The man disowned you still has contact with a woman who ruined your life, found the truth by being a snoop, and somehow stalked you halfway across the globe. Is this the chaos you're ready to unleash on your family? You're right. Not much of it adds up. It's such a messy situation, and I hate being put in this position. I'm struggling to find the right words to say to him and answer everything. Oh, sweetie, this was really brutal. To hear people who make false allegations should be sued and jailed. It ruins people's lives. This was absolutely ridiculous. The best advice I can give is to keep him out of your life. He was so willing to dump you so fast without even spending enough time to talk it out with you. Not to mention you're already happy with the life that you have without them. Of course, you can choose to forgive whoever you want, but I wonder what his motive is in trying to reconcile. Best of luck, dear. Thanks for sharing your story. Thank you. I would like to go down the AI for AI route and just not let him go near my family. I'm not the most forgiving person in retrospect. He has to live with the consequences of his actions. Now for the updates. Update 1. Hi everyone, I'm sorry I haven't updated in a while, but I finally decided not to reconcile with my father. I just couldn't find it in myself to forgive him. Some of you might be curious about what happened. So here's the story. After my last post, I went to my father's hotel room and told him that I wouldn't reconcile or do anything like that. He had tears in his eyes but understood. He explained that he had informed my mother about the truth and cut my ex-girlfriend out of the family completely. I asked why there was any contact with my ex in the first place, since many of you wondered the same thing. He said she felt too guilty to completely let go of the family. I'm not too inclined to believe that, but it's enough closure for me. Apparently, my mother didn't handle the news well and tried to get my phone number, but my father didn't share it with her. It's hard to know what to trust, given that it could all be a ploy to get me back in their lives. After they threw me onto the streets like I was a rabid dog, it still makes me sick. My son asked who was at the door that night, but I just told him it was a colleague. I'll explain to both of my kids when they're older or if they go through tough times themselves, so they know I understand. We're all doing fine now. The whole thing shook me up, but I hope my father keeps his word and maintains my privacy. If anything changes, I'll keep you posted, but for now, I think this chapter is closed. Thank you all so much for your support and kind words. If you know someone who's gone through similar things as I have, stand by them. Never throw them onto the streets. I'll always be there for my kids, ensuring they're happy, even if it means moving across the world to do so. Final update. I was living peacefully before my father found me and kicked me off as a chain of events that led to this post. I recently had an incident with my family involving them breaking a promise and angered me incredibly, and after a lot of thought, I decided I would face them directly. I flew back to my home country and met with everybody involved: my mom, dad, brother, and even the girl who accused me. I was nervous, of course, but I was shocked when I realized I didn't really see them as family. I recognized them, of course, but I didn't see them the way that I see my wife, kids, and in-laws. My mother started by breaking into tears and trying to apologize. I just felt disgusted by it. My father comforted my mother, and my brother was the one who kept his composure and initiated conversation. He asked me how I was doing, and I responded by telling him to cut any small talk and that this meeting was on my terms. I told all of them that I was not looking for reconciliation and I simply wanted closure. I made sure to tell them that I would call the police should they attempt to chase me. I asked my parents why they were so quick to abandon me, even though the police said that there was no proof. They said that they made a rash decision and seeing me in custody broke their hearts. I called them out on it since they didn't try to stick up for me or anything. So I then asked what some people on my original post had said about my father looking through my accuser's phone. He said that she came to him to ask him to clear off her phone of non-essential staff, and that's when he saw the chat logs with her friends. My dad was always good with technology, so while it wasn't fulfilling, I accepted it. I then asked my brother why he never contacted me. He looked surprised and said that he did, but I just ignored him all the time. Turns out he was right. My brother had tried hundreds of times to contact me and give me money to get me off of rock bottom, but questioned why I never answered, and assumed that I hated him because of what happened. Well, as it turns out, my mother had my contacts blocked on all of her phone plans as she paid for my brother's old phone plan, so couldn't even receive help when I was completely lost. Then the cherry on top was my ex. I first asked her why she actually did it. She said that she was scared of what would happen, and that she never stopped loving me even throughout it all. Oh yeah, right. That's a funny way of showing it. She said that every session of therapy made her feel even more guilty as she knew it was all fake. She then told me that she hadn't dated anyone since, and hopes that I would come back and she could apologize because I'm sorry. Would really reverse time and fix all of it, apparently. Oh my goodness. Even that was a bunch of bullshit because my father said that he found chat logs of 3 different partners she had when I was away. My ex broke down crying and tried to hold my hand. She had the effing audacity to ask for another chance. This just made me spiteful, and I pulled out my phone and began showing all of them hundreds of pictures of my 2 children's milestones and good times my family had together, our visits to cities, their first day of school, both of them in my wife, in my arms. I told her that this was what she could have had if she wasn't so stupid, and my parents, what they missed out on for not even hearing me out. I had a moment when I thought that I had gone too far, but I realized compared to what they did to me, I hadn't. My visit wasn't all miserable, though, as I met up with my old best friend and his family. They were happy to see me, and I was still grateful for them taking me in when it felt like the whole world was against me. A plan to return to the country someday, to show my kids where half of their culture comes from. I won't let them anywhere near my family, though. As far as I'm concerned, my only family is my wife and her family and my kids. I'd say it went pretty well. Edit. As some of you asked, I have decided over to allow my brother to fly over and meet his nephew and niece. I completely forgot to mention this in the post. Apologies. I hesitated at first as me and my brother weren't really on great terms growing up. Brotherly rivalry and all that. Story 2. My friend told my boyfriend that we were having an affair, but we're not. Boyfriend doesn't believe me. Let me start by saying that I fully understand how tricky and messy this situation is. I get why my boyfriend would be upset and even suspicious, but it's still shocking to me that he doesn't trust me. I mean, I guess it makes sense that he'd be suspicious after all that's happened, but still, it's tough. So, I've been with my boyfriend Paul for 3 years now. We've had a lot of great times together, and honestly, I really love him. But when we first started dating, he had major trust issues. You see, he'd been in relationships before where he got cheated on, and that left him pretty scarred. I knew he was dealing with a lot from those past experiences, so I wanted to reassure him that I would never do anything to hurt him. I was very clear from the beginning that I've never cheated on anyone, and never would. I also told him that I understood why he had trust issues, given his past, and that I'd do my best to help him feel secure with me. But at the same time, I made it known that being with someone who couldn't trust me was a deal breaker. I'm not comfortable in a relationship where someone's constantly suspicious or looking over my shoulder. In those early days, things were pretty rocky. He struggled with trust a lot, but over time, it got better. I made sure to be totally open with him, and I think my actions spoke for themselves. I'd always been honest with him, never cheated, and always kept him in the loop about my life. Because of that, I felt like I'd earned his trust throughout our 3 years together. But there were still moments when he felt insecure. Twice during our relationship, he asked to see the conversations I was having with my male friends. I could tell he was worried, so I obliged both times. I wanted to ease his concerns because I knew his fears came from a place of insecurity, not because he actually thought I was cheating. The second time, though, I made it clear that I was really unhappy about being treated like I was up to something shady. It felt like he didn't trust me, and that he thought I didn't deserve privacy with my friends. I understood his past, but it still wasn't fair. I told him that if he didn't trust me because of something specific I'd said or done, then I was totally willing to sit down and have a conversation about it so we could work through any issues together. But I also made it clear that if I hadn't done anything at all to make him suspicious, then I expected him to trust me. Trust is a two-way street, and without it, a relationship just can't function properly. Paul listened to what I had to say and seemed to understand. He agreed with me that I hadn't done anything wrong and apologized for making me feel like he didn't trust me. He promised not to ask again unless there was a real reason for concern, and since then, we haven't had that issue come up again. Despite all that, though, it feels like we're still not fully out of the woods when it comes to trust. While he's gotten better about it, I can't help but think there's still some lingering suspicion in the back of his mind that he's not fully sharing with me. It's tough, because I want to believe we're in a good place, but sometimes I catch little hints that he's still holding on to some of that old insecurity. One of the conversations Paul wanted to see was one I had with my friend Roger. Now, Roger confessed he was in love with me 2 years before I even started dating Paul. I told him at the time that I wasn't interested in him like that, and that was that. By the time I was in a relationship with Paul, I had no reason to think there was anything but a friendly vibe between Roger and me. We'd meet occasionally, just as friends. A week ago, Roger and I decided to grab coffee. I want to make it really clear that before this meetup, I never thought for a second that Roger had hung on to his feelings for me. At the cafe, we were just chatting as usual when suddenly, out of the blue, Roger launched into this big speech about how much he still loved me and how Paul was a terrible boyfriend. He told me I should break up with Paul and be with him instead. He went on and on about how loyal he was to me and how perfect we'd be together. Honestly, I was stunned and felt super uncomfortable. I just sat there silently while he kept talking because I was totally caught off guard. When he finally stopped, I told him, probably not as firmly as I should have because I was shocked and confused, that I loved Paul, and there was no way I was leaving him. I told Roger I needed to leave right away and go home. I felt shaken up by the whole encounter, so I took some time to calm down before heading home. When I finally got home, I was horrified to find that Roger had sent this long, completely insane message to Paul on Facebook. He talked about how much he loved me and how he believed we were meant to be together. He heavily implied that we had been carrying on an affair for weeks, though he didn't outright say it. It was a mess, and I had no clue why he did this or what was going through his head. Paul saw the message and believed it completely. I tried to explain everything to him, but he just thought I was lying. He didn't want to see me or even talk to me anymore. He told me our relationship was over. I was devastated that he would believe Roger's Facebook message over my own words. I couldn't believe our relationship was ending like this. Not only that, but I'm so embarrassed because now people are going to see me as a cheater, someone who was unfaithful to Paul. I'm furious at Roger for what he did. It's been a week since this all happened, and I've tried everything I can to get Paul to talk to me, but he's not budging. He won't listen to a word I say. I know he's had trust issues before, but I thought we'd gotten past that a long time ago. What do? Additional information from OP. When you told you can't be friends with someone after they tell you I love you, I definitely hear when you're saying, but I just want to point out, I never believed feelings would magically evaporate. Roger said he loved me 5 years ago. We were distant from each other for about a year after he told me he loved me, then reconnected through mutual friends and were friends for a year before I dated Paul. During that year, he acted totally platonically around me, and I guess I thought he had enough time to get over his feelings. He's been totally platonic as well for the 3 years that I've been with Paul. Obviously, I was wrong and you were right about how I should have cut him out, but I didn't think the feelings would just disappear. I thought the year we weren't really in contact had made them go away. However, Paul already has heard the whole and complete story, including what Roger said 5 years ago. He thinks I'm lying. However, when I say there is nothing between Roger and I now, should I still push the issue with Paul and try and make him talk to me? He's heard everything already. He just refuses to believe me. Sorry to hear that. It's a tough situation. Now for the update. Update. I want to thank everyone so much for commenting before I post what happened. I just want to address a few things that I didn't get to in the first post. First, Paul knew I was having coffee with Roger. It wasn't some kind of secret thing. Paul has female friends. He has lunch or coffee with alone, too. So this isn't unusual in our relationship. Second, Paul did not know that Roger had said that he loved me 5 years ago. I definitely made a mistake not telling him that. But honestly, it was so long ago, and to my obviously wrong knowledge was old history. We did not extensively discuss her past, so there wasn't really a natural point where it would have come up and it just never occurred to me to say anything. Finally, Roger and I did not have a particularly intense friendship. It was not like we were texting constantly or best buddies. We hung out occasionally, and we would be in touch if something relevant came up, but we just didn't chat randomly. Anyway, with that having been said, I took the advice of some Redditors, and when I was a little calmer, I Facebook message. Roger asked him why he lied. He responded with, "What do you mean?" At which point I started pressing him harder. He responded with only one-word answers, and honestly didn't reply to the most of my messages at all. No matter how much I asked and never actually said any definitive statement of yes, I lied for such and such reason. Finally, I sent him a definitive statement that I said that I never had an affair with him, that I was incredibly hurt and angry, but our friendship was over and that he was never to contact me again. He replied, "Okay," and that was that. I sent the entire Facebook conversation to Paul, not thinking it would help save us, but just try to clear my name. In my message, I asked him if Roger's reactions to my questions and my response to Roger was in line with what he would expect if Roger's accusations were true. Paul didn't respond that day, but the next day he called me. Paul basically said that the more he thought about it, the more he believed me, and that the conversation between Roger and I helped him believe that Roger's responses didn't make sense, and that he now thought nothing had gone on. However, he said despite that, the trust was broken between us and he couldn't be with me. I got pretty mad and yelled at him, asking why I was being punished for nothing, and he just basically disengaged from the discussion. Not my finest moment, I know, but I was just so overwhelmed with frustration. We did eventually end the conversation calmly, if not amiably, and he is dropping off the stuff that I left at his apartment later this week. I learned my lesson. Not only will any declaration of interest by a friend in that friendship forever, but I will never date someone who has trust issues or a history of being cheated on again. I'm sure I come across as a little bitter about this, but honestly, I feel like there was absolutely no point to my fidelity and honesty during those 3 years. I got treated like a cheater, and whether or not I cheated, and both Paul and I ended up hurt and alone despite being 100% faithful. Better to end up alone or stick with an FWB than end up investing another 3 years in a relationship to have this be the conclusion. Story 3 in my day hole for being truthful with my friends when telling them that I won't go on a weekend away because I don't want to talk about marriage and babies for 3 days. I, 27 female, have a group of female friends, 8 of us. We have been friends for over a decade since school. Now we don't live in the same place. We meet up a couple of times a year for a weekend in an Airbnb. This used to be a weekend. Good food, drinks, hot tub, etc. I am content with my life at the moment. I am single dating and I don't know if I would like children, but in the event that I did know I wouldn't want one, sin. Around 5 of my friends are either married or in very long-term relationships. Are these 5 to either have a baby or are pregnant? I will be seeing all of my friends this year for various weddings, friend baby events. I have been invited on this year's girls' trip. I have said I can't come. I didn't originally provide a reason when questioned in person by my friend who is pregnant. I told her the truth. I'm not going because it's a massive financial expense for 3 days where we only talk about people's upcoming engagements, weddings, babies. I have a lot going on, but I feel a lot of my friends do not show an interest unless I talk about someone that I'm dating. I also last time listened to one of my friends talk about her breastfeeding plans with vengeance for over an hour. She is not pregnant or trying. Truthfully, it's boring, and it feels dismissive. It's also a really expensive way to feel bad about myself. I made it clear when telling my friend this that I'm thrilled for them still living the lives that they want. But maybe it's not the weekend for me at the moment, meaning it feels like the group has 2 distinct life stages. I'm in the minority and it focuses on one stage. My friend has since told me that she's really hurt. that I'm not excited for her or her other friends. I responded saying that I evidently was from other actions, but I just didn't think the trip was for me. I do have numerous other things going on, and to fit this in both the calendar and financially is a struggle. I just want to add for this friend specifically that I have gone on 3 weekends away for her wedding, and I'm flying to go to her baby shower all in the last 2 years. I have not asked her, nor has she wanted to fly to see me for anything in the last 2 years. So my query is, am I the a-hole for being truthful with the reason why I can't go? I probably just would have said that it's too expensive and I don't have the time to go and just left it at that, but I don't think you're the a-hole though. Hey Redditors, settle down, get comfy, because this is about to be a long ride. I found out my wife had been cheating on me for about 4 years, and even went as far as to leave our son in the hospital just so she could go have fun with her affair partner. My world and everything I had believed in came crashing down. Of course, I couldn't let it go, so I decided to ruin her life and make her regret ever cheating. I am 33M, and my wife Nina is 32F. We've been married for 12 years, so a long time. We have two kids, Star, who is 12F, and Neo, who is 6M. My wife and I met at her cousin's wedding when she was 19 and I was 20. It was love at first sight. You know that feeling you get when you meet someone for the first time and you just know that you're going to spend the rest of your life with that person? Yes, that was what I felt when I saw Nina, even though we were really young and we got married a year later after she got pregnant with our daughter Star. I always knew I was going to marry Nina, so when she said she was pregnant, I didn't mind. In fact, I was happy. Becoming a father is one of the biggest joys I ever experienced. My parents, on the other hand, weren't happy, and they thought that she had baby trapped me. I didn't listen to my parents and brush them off because I knew my parents as proud upper class people. I say upper class because that's what my parents like to call themselves. LOL. I come from generational wealth, and Nina does not. So my parents believed that if I were ever to get married, I would get married to someone from an upper class family. My parents also believed that Nina had baby trapped me because I had told them Nina and I were really surprised when she had gotten pregnant. She had an IUD, but we brushed it off because we knew that an IUD wasn't 100% guaranteed. My parents, on the other hand, were adamant about the fact that she had baby trapped me. They believed she was after the money, and I laughed it off and called them crazy. I'm an only child, and so I stand to inherit everything. Looking back now, I realize my parents were right, and if I could turn back the hands of the clock, I would have listened to them. My parents, though, refused to have anything to do with the wedding unless Nina sent a prenup to avoid arguments in case. It was not a big deal, and she willing signed. We had a destination wedding because it had always been Nina's dream. I was more of a low-key person. There's this nonchalance that comes with being born in wealth, I guess. I had gotten used to it, and it no longer turned my head. Life had been that way right from the day I was born, so why would it freak me now? Nina, on the other hand, came from a poor home, so she wasn't really used to it. She wanted a big wedding, and that was what we had. I didn't really care as long as she was happy, and so I went ahead with whatever she wanted. My parents paid for the wedding because Nina and I couldn't afford it, as we were both still students. Despite the fact that my parents disliked Nina, I had already made up my mind to marry her, and they had no choice but to attend and pay for the wedding, as it was either they paid or I would pay for it out of my trust fund, and they didn't want that. My parents believed that if I paid for it out of my trust fund, I would blow away all the cash. It was a funny and absurd thought, because my trust fund held millions. I was what you would call a trust fund baby LOL. But anyways, our wedding went on. Apart from the occasional snide remarks from Nina's parents and family, who felt that my parents and family members were proud, and then eventually a full-blown quarrel between them, LOL, the marriage went on without hitch. The first few years of marriage, Nina and I busied ourselves with college and taking care of our daughter Star, and after we graduated, things eased up a bit. I started working for my dad and was earning close to 7 figures a year that made me the sole provider in the house, which I didn't mind. Nina didn't want to be a full-time housewife, and so she got a really flexible job at a locally owned business that paid well and also allowed her time for the kids. One night while we were getting ready for bed, Nina approached me and said she wanted to talk about something sensitive. I told her to go ahead, and then she broached the topic of threesomes. I was shocked as that was something we had both discussed and agreed that we would never involve ourselves in. We had both agreed that we would never involve ourselves in it, as we didn't want the fear that our partner was cheating on us with the other person behind my back. Besides, our sex life was very active, and so there was no need for that, or so I thought. Nina then told me she already had someone in mind and that she thought it would be a good experience for us. I asked her who she had in mind, and she mentioned Jason, a friend of hers who was at our wedding. He was a high school friend of hers. He and Nina were close, but not overly close, as to invoke jealousy, or so I thought, lol. She told me he was bisexual and that she thought he would be down for it. I reminded her of our agreement and that I didn't want to involve myself in that as I felt it wouldn't go down well for our marriage. I noticed that she was very sad about my refusal, but I didn't think too much of it. She nodded and told me that she had just wanted to try broaching the topic with me and that she wouldn't force me. She told me that any time I changed my mind, she would be able to talk to him. I told her that I didn't think I would ever change my mind, and she said that was also fine, and the conversation ended. About a month ago, my wife was at work, and I also was at work. Our kids were home with the nanny. My son has a severe peanut allergy, so he can't eat anything like whole peanuts, peanut butter, peanut oil, processed foods that were made with peanuts, stuff like that. So we generally try to avoid them. Ironically, my daughter has a liking for peanut, and so she tends to keep her snacks locked in a mini fridge in her room, so my son doesn't have access to them. My son knows not to eat peanuts, but he might not know if a processed food or chocolate and sweets contains traces of peanuts, so again, better safe than sorry. According to the story the babysitter and my kids told me about what happened, my daughter took a chocolate snack that contained traces of peanuts in them and was eating it. However, she got distracted when the nanny called her over to help with something. And so my daughter kept the snack in the main fridge so she would pick it up again after she was done. My son had gone to the fridge searching for a snack and had stumbled upon it, and then he ate it as he really liked chocolate. Plus, there's no rule in the house against eating others' leftover snacks in the fridge, as everyone is cool with it. He started having a severe allergy reaction, anaphylaxis, and for some reason unknown to me, his EpiPen was nowhere to be found. Trust me, I was shell-shocked when I heard it, as we usually stack up on EpiPens just in case. Anyways, the babysitter immediately called the ambulance, and then she and my daughter accompanied it to the hospital. The babysitter knows that my wife works more flexible hours than me, and that for an emergency, my wife is usually the first to be called. She called my wife. My wife came to the hospital and left. According to what the babysitter told me, she has called my wife for hours without her picking. And then when my wife picked and came to the hospital to check up on our son, she muttered something about it not being serious enough, and then told the babysitter that she had serious work to do, and then left them in the hospital. The babysitter was a temporary one for a few hours, as our nanny was feeling under the weather. It was about time for the babysitter to leave, as she had initially told us that she couldn't babysit for the whole day today. As a result of that, she was dumbfounded that my wife had left her at the hospital with no directions on what to do, and so she called me. I was in a meeting that was about rounding up, so I couldn't pick her first call. But I called back as soon as I could once it ended, which was about 5 minutes later. She sounded so relieved when I picked and filled me in on what happened. When I asked her about my wife, she told me my wife had said it wasn't serious and had left. I was surprised as my wife wasn't usually like that. I immediately went to the hospital to pay the babysitter and pick up my kids. Of course, I made sure to tip the babysitter. The doctor said my son's reaction wasn't severe as they had called an ambulance on time and that he was free to leave after a routine checkup. That was soon done, and we left. On our way home, I dropped by my wife's workplace to check in on her. So imagine my surprise when her boss told me my wife had clocked out hours ago claiming an emergency. Inwardly, I was shell-shocked. Why had my wife clocked out of work, I wondered. I would have understood if I had met her at the hospital, but if it wasn't our son's allergy, then what was the emergency? I immediately became worried because I assumed that my wife must have been feeling under the weather, and that must have made her clock out and go home. So folks imagine my surprise when I found out that my wife was not at home, and when I called her phone, she told me she was at work. I immediately became suspicious. I decided not to call her out on her lie and tell her that I had just left her workplace 30 minutes ago. I had a feeling that if I called her out, she would just cover it up with another lie. And so I pretended as if I knew nothing, briefed her on what the doctor had said about our kid when she asked, and then told her I was waiting for her to come home. When my wife came home, I acted as if nothing was wrong. We joked, laughed, and ate dinner together, then put the kids to bed. We talked before she went to bed, as I told her I had to work late, and she was okay with it because it was something I did sometimes. I waited for her to fall asleep, and in the meantime, I played games on my laptop in my office. Then after a few hours when I was sure she was asleep, I went to our room and took her phone. Unlocking her phone was easy, as we knew each other passwords. Looking back now, I realized that my wife had given me no reason to doubt that she was cheating. She covered up everything so well, from giving me reasonable lies about her absences to making sure I had all the passwords and access to all her devices, so I would never suspect she was hiding something. My wife was smart, but I was smarter. I unlocked her phone with her password and checked everything from her WhatsApp to her iMessage to her photos. I went through every texting app on her phone that I knew she used regularly. At first, I ignored Facebook because it wasn't something my wife used regularly. She used it sparsely to check updates on her old high school friends and distant family members, and also to make sure that people that didn't have her number or Gmail could reach her, like say an old high school buddy looking reconnect. But realizing I had checked everything and I couldn't find anything or any evidence of her cheating or planning anything, I decided to check her Facebook, and on opening it, I realized there was an app lock on it. I was immediately suspicious, and my sixth senses were tingling. Why was there an app lock on her Facebook when there wasn't any app lock on her other apps? I also didn't know the password to the app lock, and I couldn't even guess it. The security question was also one I didn't know the answer to. The security question was a single question. It said, "When is his birthday?" Whose birthday? I wondered. I tried my birthday, our son's birthday, her dad's birthday, and even her granddad's birthday, all to no avail. I couldn't guess who this his was. Just as I was on the verge of giving up, I remembered something. My wife had an iPad that she used to use, and her Facebook was probably still logged in the iPad. She had gotten a new iPad and had given it to our kids, but I didn't remember her ever logging out her stuff out of the iPad. In fact, her old Gmail was still logged in on the iPad. Deciding to wait for the next day, I waited for my wife to go to work and my kids to school. Then I searched for the iPad. After she had gotten the new one and then gave the iPad to the kids, our kids had eventually discarded it when they got a new one. Regardless of that, the iPad was still fully functional, so I booted it back on and charged it. After waiting for the iPad to charge for a while, I unlocked it and checked Facebook. I was right, her Facebook was still logged in on it. I immediately went to check her chats. And that was when my word came crashing down. My wife was cheating on me with a high school friend of hers called Jason. The same Jason she had suggested we do the threesomes with. Now it's all made sense. There were tons and tons of messages, dating back as far as months ago. My wife had been in a relationship with this guy for a very long time. There were tons of messages between them mocking me, mocking Jason's wife, who was also pregnant. My wife had also been giving this guy money. She had been rejoining money from our drinks accounts and giving it to this guy. I also saw messages of them arranging meeting points, most of the time when my wife had told me she was going on a girl's trip. It was all a plot to go meet with this guy and spend time with him. My wife had even revealed to the guy that the only reason she got with me in the first place was because of the money and that she had baby-trapped me. My world had come crashing down. I was shocked and on the verge of tears. My wife that I loved so much that I also thought loved me. I thought we were the perfect couple. Of course, no one on earth is perfect, but we complemented each other so well. We understood each other, we communicated well. Everything was going so good, we genuinely enjoyed spending time with each other. So why was she doing this, I wondered. Our sex life was great, and she wasn't under any stress at work. She worked a very flexible job, and I was the sole provider of the household. She didn't pay any bills. I let her use her salary for whatever she wanted, and not even her salary, but also any amount she wanted to take from our joint account. In fact, my wife was very frivolous, but I entertained her because I knew she didn't have much growing up, and this was her trying to compensate for it. I was going on a downward spiral. I kept reading the messages even though they kept hurting me because I wanted to hear everything she had said. At one point, something in me broke, and I realized that I would make sure she regretted this. Taking screenshots of as much messages as I could, I did just that and sent them to my phone. I decided to wait for a few more weeks and gather more evidence, and also wait till they decided to meet again so I would show up at their meeting point and surprise them. My wife came home in the evening, and I acted as if everything was fine. I pretended as if I hadn't just found out that she had been cheating on me for a long time and had even been burning my money on the guy. No wonder she has suggested the threesomes. She had wanted a way to weasel Jason into our lives so she could be with him and not feel guilty. I pretended as if I was happy to see her and acted as if I didn't want to throw up and show her the text messages and ask her to explain herself. She was clueless and didn't even suspect a thing, plan, and the first stage was in motion. I found a steady rhythm, using the iPad to take screenshots of their adulterous conversation and send them to my phone, and then deleting all traces of them from the iPad. I then got my lawyer to draft divorce papers that I would serve her with. It didn't even take them up to a week before they were planning to meet again. They decided to meet up at a hotel, and that was the thing that brought the second phase of my plan into motion. Up until that time, I had taken a few weeks off work by telling my dad I had a family emergency. I hadn't specifically told him what had happened because I knew my father would laugh in my face and read me the I was right act. He would reiterate that multiple times, and I knew that he would always bring it up in the future. I, however, didn't tell Nina about the weeks I had taken off of work. I faked a cold in the morning and told her I would stay home and rest and work for home when I felt better. The kids were off to school too. I stayed at home and monitored their conversation through the iPad and took screenshots up until when Nina arrived at the hotel before him and booked the hotel room. She then told him the hotel room's number she was in, so he would head up to meet her without even asking at the front desk. I took more screenshots of the conversation and kept the iPad in my office. I then went to my printer and printed out a lot of the screenshots on physical paper and photocopied a lot of copies. I kept some in a huge brown envelope and held some in my hands. I drove to the hotel and headed up to the hotel room. I didn't even need to ask them at the front desk because I already knew the room number from their conversation on Facebook. I got to the room and then knocked on the door. Jason answered from inside, asking who it was, and I told him it was room service. He said he hadn't ordered Doom service, and I told him it was complimentary room service. I guess he must have decided that there was no harm in answering because he came up to the door to answer. The shock on his face was worth recording. He was shirtless, and all he had on was a towel. On seeing me, his jaw has dropped wide open, almost comically LOL. I heard my wife's voice asking him what was wrong, and so I pushed him to the side softly so my wife would see it was me. She was lying on the bed and was only covering herself with the duvet. She was obviously naked under. When she saw me, she almost turned to stone. One would have thought I was Medusa with the way she froze LOL. I noticed I was on the verge of a breakdown, and so I threw the printouts of their conversations that I had held in my hand at them and left. I left in such a hurry that my wife didn't even regain her senses enough to chase after me. Before she could do that, I was already almost out of the hotel. I headed down to my car and cried for a solid 30 minutes. I'd had a few days to prepare for this, but nothing could ever truly prepare you to see this. I had thought I was over the grief and betrayal, but just seeing it physically broke me. I felt invalid and not enough. I inwardly resolved to make my wife and Jason's life a living hell. I drove home, and the moment I got home, I called my parents and asked them if they would be able to babysit the kids in such short notice because they didn't live far from the kids' school. I explained everything that has happened to them, but made them promise not to tell anybody now because I wasn't yet ready to tell anybody. My parents were understood and accepted to babysit. They understood that I must be going through a lot emotionally now. My dad even pipped in that he would gloat about how he was right, but only after I had grieved and gotten over the hurt. I immediately packed enough clothes and stuff to last the kids for a few weeks and called the driver to come pick them up. My kids didn't follow the school bus, and they were picked up every day by our driver. I gave the luggages to the driver and instructed him to pick up the kids from school once they closed and drop them at my parents' house. I knew that that wasn't really cool, as my kids would be very confused, but I resolved that I just needed to get through this week, and I would go get them the next week and explain everything to them in a way they would understand. In a few hours, Nina came home crying and begging and pulling out the waterworks. She was begging me, saying that we would get through this together. To which I told her she was delusional. I told her I wanted her out of the house, but not before I went upstairs and got the divorce papers. I sat her down and told her we could do this two ways. One, we could go to court and fight it out, or two, she could sign the divorce papers and all would be well. If she chose the first option, I would make sure I exposed her and Jason to everybody, including Jason's wife, and even Jason's boss and my wife's boss. I would also make sure I tell every single family member of each of our families. But if she chose the second option, I would not tell anybody, and if anybody asked me why we divorced, I would simply tell them that we had grown apart. She was shocked. She said she didn't want divorce at all, and wanted us to talk it out. But I told her that was out of the table, and that that wasn't happening even if a miracle occurred. She must have realized that I was serious because she told me to tell her the terms of the second option. She knew she would be in serious trouble if I told anybody. I smiled. The terms were simple. I would get child custody, and if she were to get visitation rights, it would be supervised visit. I was pretty sure supervised visits would not hold in court because she was not a criminal at all and did not face any danger to the kids. But I was still willing to try. If supervised visits didn't hold, then she could get weekends. She would get no alimony or anything from me, We already had a prenup in place, so I wasn't really worried about how properties were going to be shared. I inwardly thanked my parents for the first time ever for insisting on a prenup. She was in tears. She spent the next 5 minutes trying to convince me, saying it was a mistake. She didn't mean it. She told me every excuse under the sun, but it was obvious I wasn't buying it. I told her to sign the divorce paper, but she refused, so I told her to leave the house. I didn't care if she refused to sign the divorce paper because I knew she would eventually cave in. That was how it always was. I know she will spend a few days thinking and trying to convince me, and then when she kills see that I am adamant about the divorce, she will finally sign it. In the meantime, I have kicked her out. I gave her 5 minutes to pack her stuff and then told her to get out. She asked me what I would tell the kids, and I told her that I knew what to tell the kids and not to worry because I wouldn't tell the kids about her cheating. So yeah, here I am right now, alone at home, crying and drowning my sorrows with a bottle of wine. I honestly don't know what to do anymore, so I decided to come on Reddit to see if anyone had had a similar experience or something. I feel as if someone has pulled out the rock under my feet, as if everything I knew has been a lie. I honestly do not know where to go from here, but I'm trying my hardest to be strong.